With the COVID pandemic, individuals who are at risk of or who are already experiencing gender-based violence, for many, the situation has worsened.
Crisis hotlines saw a dramatic surge in calls during the COVID-19 pandemic in Canada. Now the federal government announcing a $30 million investment to bolster gender-based violence supports. Manitoba was the first province to sign a bilateral agreement with the federal government. $1 million is being given to Manitoba over the next 4 years to support crisis hotlines. Federal Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth, MARCI says similar agreements will be signed with other provinces and territories over the next few months.
We know that true and lasting gender equality is only possible when women, girls, and gender-diverse people are safe.
Ian says calls to crisis centers have spiked during the pandemic, exposing what she calls a shadow pandemic of gender-based violence in the country. Ian says this new funding will offer more robust crisis hotline services and supports required to meet the urgent need.
Gender-based violence continues to be a huge problem in Canada.
KLINIC Community Health, a not-for-profit healthcare center in Winnipeg, is receiving funding. The clinic says their sexual assault crisis line has seen a 231% increase in calls between 2020 and 2022.
We feel it and we see it every single day, and we know how critical it is that we be able to invest more and be able to expand the services that we can offer.
Ann WILCOX, Executive Director of KLINIC Community Health, says this funding will be put to good use. Since the beginning of 2022, they have trained an additional 75 volunteers and have planned more training sessions for the fall.
Crisis lines save lives.
Minister Rochelle Squires says Manitoba has some of the highest rates of intimate partner violence and family violence in Canada. Violence that primarily affects women and girls and those living in rural, remote, and northern communities. Kim Fontaine, Executive Director at Equoy Wajidawayne, an Indigenous women's shelter and support line provider, says crisis line funding is important, but adequate housing and shelter is required for those escaping abusive situations.
We have a housing crisis, and so if we're going to invest in these critical life-saving services, we definitely need to ensure that we have the space to house these folks.
In Winnipeg, Mark Neufeld, City News.